Do you believe that religion is a man-made, right?
No, I don't believe Christianity is man-made. It's made by God through Jesus Christ. A Christian is a follower of Jesus Christ. I don't follow Christianity. Christianity has been used to oppress your race. Christianity has been used to justify sexism. Christianity has been used to justify the Crusades, the Inquisition, the Salem witch trials. So no, I'm not out here pushing Christianity. I'm out here pointing out that Jesus Christ is reliable in a way that Christianity is not reliable.
Spaceless, timeless, and unchanging.
Yes.
How is his existence different from a principle? How do we say he's personal?
Good. Very good. All right. You have friends, right? I have friends. We are personal. Meaning by that, we are capable of loving each other, trusting each other, building friendships, aren't we? All of us can do that. Where does that come from? Oh, there's no God, some people say, which means, to be consistent, it comes from matter and energy, which means you believe that the personal comes from the impersonal. What a joke. What an absolute joke. This brick has no personal qualities. This tree has no personal qualities. You can't have a friendship with a tree. You can't have a friendship with a brick. It takes a personal being with a mind, a free will, the ability to love that you can build a relationship with. So the question becomes, where does your personal ability come from? It doesn't come from that brick. It doesn't come from that metal, and it doesn't come from that tree. It comes from a personal God who creates you with the innate ability to have consciousness and to be personal. And if you say there is no God, what you're telling me is, no. The personal comes from the impersonal. The ability to love comes from matter and energy. Hogwash. Baloney. That is so irrational, it's scary. Is that science? No. That's philosophy we're using, not science.
The decision to create moral absolutes and then the opportunity for us to understand that there are moral absolutes, obligations, and duties. I mean, what is more likely? That there's randomly just this principle, it's Platonism in many ways, this Platonic principle, or that there is a creative mind that actually put in place these principles of goodness, evil, right, wrong, why you should do this, why you should not do this. And then ultimately, this, whether it's a principle or a personal being, I would say only a personal being can make the decision to say, this is ultimately Damien, this is ultimately Cameron, what is right and wrong. It's not just this principle up here, came from nothing, and ultimately it was decisionlessness, if we can say, that somehow created what was right and wrong. No, you need a person to say, this is right and wrong, now I'm going to give you the ability to understand what is right and wrong. Now, every single person that I encounter would desire a relationship with a personal God. Trust me, when you're at a deathbed of somebody, you don't just want to say, you're part of God, even your death and the demise, it's all part of God, I'm sorry. No, you want a personal God who actually can get in touch with your suffering because he sent his only son to suffer in the worst type of way imaginable at that time, which was going to a cross. The Roman Empire were absolutely murderous and just figured out creatively how to inflict the most pain upon a criminal or somebody who claimed to be God. And that's what they did to Jesus Christ. So when I'm talking with somebody, they want a personal God, and they feel like there has to be a personal God out there if a personal God truly exists or if any God exists. And so getting in touch with and figuring out Is that tree over there really part of God and God? Is there a God that only says, submit to me, and that's it? Or is there a God of love? Is there a God of love? And if there's a God of love, that God has to be personable. Or like Cliff was saying, that God can't love.
Why is being a biochemical being necessarily a bad thing? If we are just, organisms, we still have our own morality, and as a society, we can have these broader ideas of love and passion, which aren't necessarily scientifically proven,
Yeah.
without the need for appealing to a God for our morality. Why is that a bad thing just because we are biochemical beings?
Okay. I've miscommunicated. Your biochemistry is very, very important. Your physical body is crucial. And if there's a biochemical mix-up in your brain, please go to a good psychiatrist to allow him to get the chemicals balanced. And if you have cancer, please respect that fact. Go to a good doctor and have him give you whatever it takes to get rid of that cancer. So I'm sorry, we did not mean to communicate that the biochemical is unimportant. No, it's very important, all right? But what we're saying is, if you reduce her to just her body, her biochemical responses, the chemicals in her brains, you have not told the whole story. She has a soul. She has a free will. She has the ability to love and hate. She has motives. She has ambitions. She chooses how to treat her enemy. She chooses how to treat people of different races. She chooses what she does with her sexuality. She has a soul. She's not just a biochemical machine. Does that make sense?
Sure, but I just don't understand why you need God to prove those things.
Okay, good. If there is no God, how can she have a soul? An intangible free will. How can that exist if there is no God?
I mean, you're describing the concept of what we understand as soul, but it can be a biochemical thing that naturally occurs. You're just attributing a supernatural reason to it. And it could just be the way we try to grasp concepts that are too hard to explain.
Sir, if you limit all of reality to matter and energy, how can there be something beyond matter and energy, this intangible thing we call love? Does this brick have any ability to love? No. Does this tree have any ability to love? No. But if there is no God, what you're telling me is there's no spiritual being, there's no personal being, there's simply matter and energy. Fine, I hear you. But what you're telling me is I'm limiting reality to the physical, matter and energy. Well, how do you get love and free will if I'm just a complex biochemical reaction right here? See, if I'm just a complex biochemical reaction, then I don't love her. I treat her the way my chemicals program me to treat her. And if I slap him, I didn't have a choice. My chemical reactions in my brain program me to slap him. But if I have a soul, a free will, the ability to love, if I'm a personal being, then I can choose to slap him, or I can choose to take out my wallet and give him money for lunch. I don't have to do either. You see, sir, my experience of life is I can hate him, I can love him. I can smack him, or I can give him a $20 bill for lunch. I don't have to do either. And my experience of free will convinces me there is more to me than just a chemical reaction here. What do you say to the man who said, I had to date rape her? I have such a high testosterone level that I had to date rape her. Do you agree with him? Why not? If he tells you the reason I date rape is because I have a very high testosterone level, why do you not believe him?
Well, because our society, and as a society, we acknowledge that rape is wrong and it's immoral, so it should not be done. But again, you don't need religion to know that it's immoral to rape someone. So.
Yeah. And as a society, Nazi Germany said we're going to gas Jews. And as a society, white South African society said, we're going to denigrate black people. And as a society, the United States at the time of the Dred Scott decision said black folks are 3/5 the value of white folks. And as a society, cannibalistic societies eat people. Are you sure that you really believe that my decision to freely love him or hate him is simply a result of my society conditioning me?
Society isn't always right, but neither is religion. I mean, Christianity, Islam, any major religion has been used in the name of killing millions of people. In the same way society changes, so does religion. And as time has gone on, you try to interpret more of the good things to religion, but you have to also acknowledge that how much horrible things are there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because I have a free will, I can take someone as good as Jesus Christ and use Christ to justify my racism, my hatred of him. Why is that? Because Christ said racism is good? No. Because Christ said hating him is good? No. But because I have a free will. And because I have a free will, I can play all types of intellectual gymnastics and get to the point where I use Jesus Christ to justify racism, hatred, denigrating another person. It says nothing about Jesus Christ. It tells you a lot about my free will and who I am as a person. Does that make sense? Stuart, what do you think?
Well, do you believe that DNA, that cellular activity, came from just a premortal soup? There is no evidence that a cell has come, especially an information-producing cell, has come from this type of soup that we talk about, and that we ultimately came from it as well. Secondly, do you believe that a DNA, a cell can create a protein? It has the informational power to create a protein? Okay, there's no evidence for that either. Scientists are still guessing how in the world does this come about. Do you believe that that nice lady over there who's looking at the menu about to order, do you believe she's looking at that menu and just seeing from a materialistic perspective that there is no God? She's just seeing the ink blots and the physical menu? Because if that's true, then there is no God and there is no information and there is no ability to actually have a type of transference between a mind and the information on that very menu. You have to have an immaterial process of gaining that information. But if it's just a materialistic universe, it's just the ink blots and it's just the plastic right there on that menu. So a God that you get in John chapter 1, the Word, where you get the Trinity, the Word became flesh, a language and informational God. God speaks things into existence. Everything about your existence has to do with language and passing on information. We're doing that right now. You're going to be doing that all day in class with classmates. That is immaterial. How, from a materialistic perspective and point of view, can you get to the point of saying there's an immaterial type of information passing on? It makes way more sense if there's a creative mind that is immaterial, that is God, that is a language-producing being, a creative mind to give us this opportunity to connect through language and passing on information.
But but the things you said, like seeing and understanding the mind, like science has proven, like there's places in the brain that percept those senses and try to compute what it is, what's going on. And that's how our brain works. And some people's brains aren't able.
Sorry, can you just speak a little louder?
So okay. And some people's brains aren't able to compute those things correctly. That's why some people are colorblind against certain colors.
Right.
So by your logic, you're saying that in between understanding, seeing something, God somehow put this person with a lesser than interpretation of the world, or it's just their brain and mutations in our DNA, out of a lot of it pure randomness, just led someone to be colorblind. Isn't that just science already proves like our comprehension and how it works in the brain?
Yeah, but there's no initial mechanism that starts this whole process. And science would say we came from nothing, or Heidegger talks about how we were just thrown here out of nowhere. So how do you have this incredible creative process that even got to the point of producing a type of colorblindedness? How do you get that? And then you sound like it's morally wrong. Why is that wrong? Some people are colorblind, some are not. Some people have mental illness, some don't. Morally, from an evolutionary perspective, that's not wrong. Actually, they're just part of the weak. And maybe we should annihilate them so the strong can just get stronger and the society should just get better. So yes, I'm aware of stories like Phineas Gage and others who you probably have all read about. The spike going through his prefrontal lobes on that train track. And what occurred? He went from a very nice townsman who many people knew to nasty and mean. His personality totally changed. So yes, I believe we have a physical brain, but we also have a mind to make decisions with. We have a personhood that is beyond just your physical, moist robot. See, if you're going to be consistent as an atheist or whatever you are, if there is no God, then you have to go about saying that there's no real me, there's no real self that's innate. There's just my brain, physical brain, and there's just my physical makeup and my body. And that's great. That's a large leap of faith you're taking, but maybe that's right. And so what even explains the colorblindedness even more is you're saying that morally and the suffering piece of that is not right. But God did not create that. A messed up world created that. Entropy created that. Our own free will. 90% of the evil that we see and suffering we see is from our free will as free agents, not just mechanical moist robots if there is no God, determined to do these things or determined to have these types of outputs of color blindedness. No, I'm well aware that you have oxytocin, you have endorphins, you have serotonin, you have all different types of cortisol and neurochemicals in your brain. That makes sense. That's creative. That's incredibly complex. But you know, sir, that you have something beyond just a brain. You know that love is not just created by oxytocin and serotonin and the endorphins you get when you just go on a date for the first time and you have these lovey-dovey feelings. You know it's beyond that. I hope you know it's beyond that, because when you get a wife and you go home one day from work and you say, well, my love for you is simply the oxytocin right now determined in my brain. That's all it is. And that could change tomorrow. It has nothing to do with me and my own sacrifice and loving you and going to do the dishes and serving you in that kind of way. That doesn't really exist. If you're going to be a consistent atheist, that's how you got to be thinking.
I guess there's that answer.
Good question.
What does the Bible say about abortion?
Great question. All right, so in the early Roman Empire, what Christians were doing was abortion was too risky. So there was very little medical practice going on with abortion. What they were doing was they were taking 6-month, 1-year-old, 2-year-old babies and infants off burn piles that were just thrown there as typically girls. It was the handicapped. They were on burn piles. And so Christians were going and saving those lives, adopting those kids, bringing them into the church, and giving them an opportunity to actually understand that they have self-worth, that their parents were wrong in aborting them or just throwing them on dump heaps to be burned to death. So the Bible from the very beginning says every single human being at the very start of conception has innate value created in the image of God. So many Christians would say, well, in the Old Testament, you have even, you knit me together in my mother's womb. So a lot of pro-lifers will say that. Well, that's poetry, and I agree with that as well. Everything in the Bible uplifts, and the earliest Christians understood every single person, handicapped, slave, Samaritan, Jew, has innate worth. So do whatever you can in sacrificing to help that beautiful person. What do you think about abortion?
I mean, personally, I'm against it because, like, of my religion. But I mean, I know, like, a lot of people say, like, I mean, males don't even have a say, really. Like, what if, I mean, they bring up kind of some circumstances like rape or if the mother's gonna die or if the baby's gonna come out with like an illness.
Right.
And I mean, although like those circumstances are understandable, but I mean, I just wanted to know like how the Bible would see those.
Amy Schumer did a comedy skit where when she was pregnant, She said, you know what? If me and my husband want to take a vacation to Italy in 4 months, I can just get rid of this thing. I mean, it's just in the way of my vacation time. Now, she was making fun of that type of thinking. I believe she's pro-choice, and yet she sees the nastiness, the contradictory nature of that, because she knows this baby is it's more than just a clump of chemicals and cells. Because if it is that, then yeah, discard it. It's simply like getting a haircut. It's the same thing as the hairs that fall off your head. It's the same thing as picking your calluses, like Cliff likes to say. My dad's been saying that for a while. It just falls off your body, so it's just cells. But we know that's not true. These far, far left liberals who are comedians will make this argument in a way where they know it's ridiculous. That's why they're bashing it through their humor. But then at the end of the day, they'll still stick with it because they'll say, you know what? It's impinging upon my freedom. My freedom. And my freedom, my personal autonomy has to win the day. But Christians are not off the hook. Christians who just condemn abortion and just leave it there, that is wrong. Christians should be getting into part of the process of helping adoption sources, resources, because oftentimes that's not the case. So now all of a sudden you have a crack baby, and then you have all of a sudden 6 of them, which a single mother is taken care of in the inner city. Okay, Christians, you gotta help out. You gotta help out. And so I'm not standing here just saying it's wrong, but you don't need to do anything about it. But Christians should be on the front lines. They have been in the past. Fortunately, in many ways, they are still today. So that's how you start to think through it. But in the cases of rape, that is very hard, and yet I would still say it was not that baby's fault. And that baby still has innate value and worth, and bring that baby into this world. In the case of mothers, I would save the mom's life first before the baby. And that's tremendously painful, and I've seen it many times.
Does Malachi 3:10 apply to us? I don't know about y'all, but
read it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Malachi 3:10 essentially says that the Lord wants you to test Him with your offering, right? Mm-hmm. See that I will not fill your barns and grains up to the point where you can't store it.
Right.
If you give your offering to me, I don't have it memorized. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But when I was watching George Janko's podcast once, and I mean I know he's a good friend of y'all's, but I kind of took this. It kind of resonated to me whenever George said that he promises, or almost like he guarantees, that you will be wealthy if you give more, right? To me, I don't know. It at first it kind of resonated with me. I was like, that's awesome, right? But now it's starting to sound more like prosperity gospel, and I kind of wanted to get your opinion on like whether Malachi 3:10 still applies to us today or just the Israelites of that time. And what do you think about like prosperity gospel?
Great question. Okay, so there's blessings and curses in the Old Testament. Israelites, typically when they were obeying God, they were getting blessed. They absolutely were getting blessed. But then all of a sudden when they turned away from God, they were getting cursed. Strongly cursed. They were being swept up into Babylonian captivity as one of the examples. They were losing 30,000 of them in 1 Samuel 4 and 5 to the hand of the Philistines. So blessings and curses, there was much more, like you said beautifully there in Malachi, this direct understanding of you do wrong, you're going to get punished, you're going to get cursed. You do right, you're going to get blessed, and God's going to use you ultimately to go to the promised land. And that's why so often when there are other civilizations in the way, there's holy war. Typically that civilization has been doing something very wrong. I don't know any examples where they attack a holy people who's doing great good and just slaughter them, right? So there is that incredible difference there that we look at that we don't see in the New Testament. Because you're exactly right with your type of thinking. Jesus Christ lived a pretty sinless life. I think he was the epitome of all goodness. Did he get blessed? Did he get health, wealth, and wisdom? He got some wisdom, but he didn't get health and wealth at the end of the day. And so the prosperity gospel you got to be very careful with. I don't outright disagree with every point prosperity gospel. Folks, I mean, we have many people who have come through our church who've been that way. No, when you are serving God, when you're sacrificing for God, when you're tithing, oftentimes God blesses you in different ways. Oftentimes, it's through you, other people see your generosity. That oftentimes happens. That's so frequent that it benefits them so much, where they want to change their lives. and live for God and live for others. But no, I don't think there's a one-to-one correlation, especially anymore today, which is I'm going to give away $5,000, which is 80% of my bank account, and now all of a sudden God's going to give me $100,000. I don't get that in Scripture, and not even in the Old Testament do you get with the blessings and curses a direct type of understanding of, here it is, do this and you will get this. Because even look at Job. Job had some serious suffering, and I don't remember anything he did wrong, but then God does bless him at the very end. So there's total breakdown without him doing anything wrong, but then yes, eventually he gets blessed. But again, that's not because he all of a sudden started stopping questioning God. No, he wasn't questioning God in the beginning. Romans 8:28, God works together those things for those who love him. People get that wrong. God works together all things for those who honor and love him. That includes suffering. That includes how you worship him well. He's working all things together for those who love him. So it's not a prosperity gospel. But I like what George says, because you're right. He does go with that line of thinking sometimes where it's, yes, if you follow God, oftentimes things will work out very well because that's the correct fabric of the universe. Live in line with him, and you will experience blessings. Turn from him, live a sexually promiscuous lifestyle, that will come back to bite you in the butt, usually, once you get married.
Right. Well, in Malachi 3:10 it says, God tells the Israelites to test him with their offering.
Right.
See how much I'll bless you if you give me your offering, if you give me your time. Right. We are to test him with our offering, and obviously there's no other verse in the Bible that says to test him, but that is the only one.
Right.
Are we still to do that today?
Right.
To God?
So often you're right, when we get testing, it's don't test the Lord your God.
Right. Yeah.
And so, again, we got to be careful with that word testing, though. Is Malachi really talking about test God and just see how much great wealth he's going to give you if you really tithe in a certain way? You can't take one verse and form an entire theological position around that one verse. A lot of guys have been coming out here and saying, we're going to take one verse when it comes to baptism and say you have to get baptized in order to get to heaven. Got to be careful. I would always say, and I always learned this in Hebrew and Greek, every professor said, do not take one verse. Never read one Bible verse. That's the line. Never read a verse. Always read context and always bring other verses into play. Yeah, great question. Absolutely. I'd like to invite you to Grace Community Church, located at 365 Lukeswood Road in New Canaan, Connecticut. Our services are at 9:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. on Sundays. Hope you can join us.